Alrighty. Hello and welcome to the Premier League segment this week. So I'm Tommie C, obviously, joined by Andy, both of us in our respective bedrooms on opposite sides of the world. Just a sign of the times, really. Andy, how are you, mate?
I'm good. It's like we're in a long distance relationship, Tommy. I feel like I should be lying on my bed, like kicking my feet up in the background, like
Mate, you
twiddling
can.
the quick twiddling the phone line. But no, I'm well, mate. Except, we're obviously again back in our customary lockdown for this time of the year, so not much else to do.
Andy, for the listeners who are maybe catching this on the podcast version, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing a t-shirt and jeans, Tommy. If you want to know what's underneath, you'll have to buy me a drink first.
Very good. All right. Look, let's drop the foreplay and get on to some football, shall we? First up, though, look, less because of the actual match itself, but more because it gives us an opportunity to talk about them. We're going to be talking about Burnley versus Man United. First up, obviously, Man United got the victory. A Paul Pogba goal gave Man United top spot in the Premier League, which is really, I guess, the big takeaway from this match, which was played, I think, almost four days ago now. But look, we've kind of, I think it's been said already that everyone is just doesn't really know what to make of Man United being top of the league at this point. They haven't been particularly consistent. They haven't been particularly sort of pleasing on the eye either. And I mean, they've shown bursts in games where they've been poor and then just really turned it on for about 20 minutes and scored a few goals. But I guess the real test for Man United is going to be coming up tonight, as it is against Liverpool, where they're really going to be seeing not necessarily a team that's at their best, but we're going to be seeing a top team who have made a habit out of winning, regardless of whether or not they play well or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, we will swing back around to talk more about Manchester United versus Liverpool. But I guess if there's one player I do want to talk about, and forgive me if this feels like we've done this to death, but Paul Pogba. I mean, the transfer window is open, and shock horror, Paul Pogba decides to turn up and play good football, scores goals, and he's been rightly touted as the man of the match out of this result. How shocked were you about this, Andy?
Well, Tommy, if it feels like we've done this to death, it's because we have. As you rightly point out, like it is the case that every transfer window, whether it's to negotiate a new contract or to get or to angle for a move away, that is the time when, that and when he's playing for France is where Paul seems to play his absolute best. All of that being said, not shocked at all in his performance, because he is a world-class player on his day when he does put it on. So he was great. His goal was very well taken. It felt like a vintage Pogba goal, even though it did take a deflection. But that downwards volley, that was just like a classic Pogba movement.
A real sort of technically excellent moment that he's not going to do that for you every game, but he is going to pull that out sort of every fourth or fifth game for you, and it's
a reminder of what he can do. Exactly, it's a reminder of like, for a guy with his just his athletic ability, but his genuine skill force, like he is a world class midfielder. So,
and I think the biggest issue, I think, with Pogba has been not necessarily his attitude or anything like that. I think the biggest issue with Paul Pogba over the last few years is the pressure that came along with that huge transfer fee. And because there's been this expectation that he's going to score 20 goals a season or get 20 assists a season, and I just don't think he's ever been that kind of player. And I think we're now maybe seeing Paul Pogba in a space where he doesn't have the same expectation that's been placed on him because he was sidelined for so long, and Man United sort of found a bit of a groove. Now he's sort of come back into the side, and he can sort of carve out a bit of a niche for himself as opposed to being the main man.
The main guy. I think 100% right. And again, we've talked about it before, but this is where the importance of Fernandes to whether Pogba plays well is, because it's not just through him. And even at his absolute best at Juventus or even for France, he's not the only guy. He has to have other good players around him. Superstar in his own right, but like he was never going to fix all of United's problems, and I still don't think that's the case. So
mate, you mentioned at the top though. What do you think is going to be happening with Paul Pogba this window? Do you think he's going to get a contract extension, or do you think he's going to be leaving?
I think they extend him. I don't think Man United, while they might, even potentially today end up 6 points clear if I mean, God willing, it doesn't happen. But if they were to get the win today and be 6 points clear, I don't think they're in a position where they can let that sort of player go. I mean,
it would be a bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
It would be a disaster for Man United if they sold him, I think, in this window, because especially because of the depressed economic environment for all of these clubs, even the biggest clubs, the Barcelonas, Real Madrids of the world, I don't think any of them would be able to afford much more than about 30 million at this point. And so for them to be selling him for 30 million at this point, I think would be a bit of a disaster for them, which probably means it's going to happen.
Who could they? Well, possibly, but who would they bring in? I mean, are you then going to just rely on McTominay? Van der Beek's hasn't really kicked off this season. It's just going to become a Bruno Fernandes show, even more so than it is now. So I think that would be a disastrous move for them. I think they need to have, and just like the optics of it for the club. You think you brought this guy back, okay, it hasn't quite worked out the way it was, but the team's finally getting going, relatively speaking, and now you're going to flog this guy off for half of what you brought him back for. That would be a disaster. They'd be mad to do that.
Exactly. So there you have it. All signs point to Pogba getting a contract extension.
Yeah, and returning to the bare minimum, the bare minimum performance levels.
Exactly. All right, we'll move on though. Lots of football that we're going to be covering this week in our Premier League segment. And next up, Damo's team, Sheffield United, managed to break their duck for the season and finally get off the mark with their first win. Not a particularly fun game. Both sides either lacking quality in the final third, or just lacking time in the opposition's final third. As it were. Billy Sharp, of course, provided the decisive goal from the penalty spot to give Sheffield United the 1-0 win. Not particularly surprised, to be honest, out of these two teams that there was only one goal scored and that it was from the penalty spot.
Look, I kind of hoped that Damo would be around to cover this one because I didn't watch more than the highlights.
I watched the first half and then went to sleep at halftime, and it wasn't an easy watch.
I feel bad. I've got so much not just because of my deep and everlasting affection for Damo, but I feel really bad for Sheffield because I'm like, this is not a bad team, and they don't play badly, but I just feel like they've just had one of those seasons. They kind of need a bit of a refresh, maybe, but I just don't they've kind of just run out of time. And even if they play like this for the rest of the season, I don't think it's possible for them to stay up, and it's a bit disappointing.
They're still very much in the hunt. I mean, they're 6 points behind West Brom, and I guess the bad thing for Sheffield United is that West Brom and Fulham haven't actually been in terrible form lately. So
no, they're relying on them to drop off. So you kind of need all three things to go their way, and that's what I'd be worried about.
Yeah, I think it's going to be far closer than it is at the moment. Come the end of the season, though, for Sheffield United.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, Wolves, who we're going to be covering again in a little bit more detail. They hosted Everton. Everton got the win there. A resurgent Everton, actually, who have won 5 of their last 6 games, which I don't think anyone's really talking about Everton's form at the moment, but it surprised me when I scratched the surface a little bit there. Luca Dean returned from injury, who's a massive return for them. He provided the assist for Michael Keane to score the winner, which ended up separating the two teams. Manchester City hosted Brighton, another game where there was only a single goal in it. This time, Phil Foden, he got the winner in this game. Andy, you're over in the UK. We might have lost Andy there for a second.
No, I'm back. I'm very much back in the picture, back in the game. Sorry about
that. Andy, you're over in the UK. Did you catch what Gary Lineker has nicknamed Phil Foden?
I didn't. I've seen people tweeting about it, but I didn't actually hear what he said.
He said Phil Foden, more like Filth Foden, as in like filthy. Which,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean, I've only ever known Phil Foden as the Stockport Iniesta.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never liked that. I mean, the guy had barely played 30 games, I think, for City, and he was being having a huge nickname like that thrown on his shoulders. I mean, it hasn't worked out real well for Angus
He's not the
Thurgate
Welsh
in the.
Messi, or the Welsh Messi, Joe Allen.
No, was he? He's the Welsh Pirlo, isn't he?
Oh, he's Welsh. It doesn't matter actually. Either way, he's Joe Allen.
You're right. Either way, Joe Allen's still playing in the championship right now. So yeah. Moving on though, Spurs hosted Fulham, and I would have probably put this down as was a pretty straightforward 3 points for Spurs, but Spurs just they seem to jump around between regulation wins and just cruising past opposition to making things really difficult against teams that they really shouldn't be making things difficult against. They went up through a really nice Reguilon cross to Kane for a good goal for them, and only after 25 minutes though, and the score stayed at 1-0 until the 73rd minute, where Cavaliero's header from a nice Lookman cross beat Hugo Lloris, which meant that it stayed 1-1 for the remainder of the game. And I guess if this was ever a game that highlighted that Alderweireld and Dyer aren't Terry and Carvalho, it was this. Is like Fulham have struggled to score goals all year, and here they are. They Spurs can't keep a clean sheet against them. So, just you'd be screaming at the TV, I think, if you're a Spurs fan watching this one.
Well, you just wonder, because you think we're at home. This is a Spurs team that is in theory supposed to be challenging for the title. They are supposed to have a master tactician in Mourinho at the helm. And yet they invited so much pressure on themselves for the entire game. And although, yes, it is a Fulham team that is not necessarily clicking in attack and not scoring sort of as many goals as they need to, but over the course of the game, they'll get a chance eventually. And especially this, like you said, this Spurs backline is not, while this team has Mourinho, a lot of correct, it's got a lot of the makings of a Mourinho team in that they're physical, they counter attack well, like they've got a lot of the hallmarks, but not all of them, and that there is still a soft offensive underbelly in this team, and they will concede goals if they invite pressure like that, and you've got to wonder what was the plan here? Like, was it really just to win 1-0, or? It was also that when even they didn't seem to be counter-attacking, like they kind of just would defend and then play the ball out, and like they didn't really put guys forward.
I guess this is the challenge for Spurs at the moment, is that like they're coming off of the New Year, the Christmas New Year period, and I think they're probably just shattered, and there's no one else still really apart from Kane who can step into that front line, and there are other players that can play a similar role to Son, but also none of them are nearly as effective as Son. I mean, I did see on Twitter in the last few days people questioning like why isn't Bale playing more often? Like,
that was my next question.
His talent is unquestioned at this point in his career, but I mean, surely he's got to be contributing both in minutes and in goals as well. And you'd think this is a bit of a no-brainer, right? You're up 1-0, bring him on with 30 minutes to go and let him play himself into some form while a little bit of the pressure's off against a team that really is sort of struggling a little bit. But
and Tommie, could I just kind of check? You're not saying that Spurs are too reliant on Kane and Son, are you?
I think I posed that question last week. Or at least we discussed that point.
Definitely. But
mate, we talked about Everton's form just before. Spurs' form, they've only won once in their last 5, including 2 losses and 2 draws. So yeah, just like I remember, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was only a month ago we were saying, geez, this Spurs side, they look really good going forward. They're keeping clean sheets, and everything's just kind of fallen apart a little bit pretty much since then. So, I mean, they're only So they're 5 points behind Leicester, who are in second, and they've played they're 6 points behind Man United, and they've played the same number of games. So they could still be only, I guess, 3 points off of top spot potentially if results go their way. And it's just, I guess, a crazy season where if any team in that sort of top 4 gets any real burst of consistency, they're going to be a really good shout to take out the title. So it almost reminds me a little bit of that first Chelsea season under Conte, how like no one really grabbed the season by the scruff of the neck, and then in about November, Chelsea just went on a great run of form, and by sort of March or April, like they'd pretty much wrapped up the title just because sort of out of nowhere they just went, yep, cool, we're going to just take this competition by the scruff of the neck. Yeah. So I think the league is sort of screaming out for that. It looked like Liverpool were going to do it as well, but
that's you know, and that, but we've talked about this point before already. But because of the fixture congestion, you can pick up and lose momentum really quickly. You know, rather than when you're playing 2 to 3 games a week, it seems it only takes 3 wins to all of a sudden be Everton, and they've had their third coming now of like Everton's back in form. It's the third time it's happened, and Spurs have dropped off. Like this is going to keep happening throughout the year.
You mentioned about sort of the fixtures as well, and I mean, like I've got the table in front of me now, and you still got a huge range of teams in terms of how many games they've all played. So Villa are down in 10th on 26 points, but they've got 3 matches in hand and could see themselves jump up to second if they win all 3 of those. So it's just a crazy season.
It's a false table, and it's going to be like that, I think, right up until the end. I mean, except 2 weeks ago, it was I think City had 2 games in hand, and they still do. I can't remember actually.
Exactly, yeah. Mate, one final thing before we move on though. Eriksen's been linked with a return back to Spurs after leaving. There's no one else really that I could think of who would be sort of a good fit for at this point. I'm quite surprised things haven't worked out for him at Inter, but alas, they haven't.
On the other hand, I'm not surprised they haven't worked out for him at Inter.
Mate, if you're Daniel Levy and Jose, do you take Eriksen?
No, I play Bale more. I know he's not the same player, but like there seems to, if you need an alternative in attack, there seems to be one there on the bench. But I mean, what are the terms of them taking him back permanently? I don't know.
I'm guessing it would be on
loan. Yeah. Oh, on loan, they take him.
With an extra bit of context, it sounds as though Pochettino is going to be taking Dele Alli on loan to PSG. You think if Dele Alli leaves, do you think Eriksen comes back?
I think there's a bit more space there in the squad. I mean, I still think Mourinho hasn't made up his mind on Dele Alli.
He's barely played, hasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he played that cup game and was very impressive apart from there's a very funny clip of him going arse over and the Spurs bench laughing at him.
Mate, are you talking about the game where Spurs played against a team from the 8th tier of English football? Is that the game you're referring to?
Might be. I can't remember who they played. But
Marine, yeah. So I'm a little bit shocked that you're saying that means that Dele Alli's back in favour.
No. That was the last time I remember him playing, and he looked very good in that game. And Mourinho said, "Oh, Dele was fantastic today."
Right, okay.
That was why.
Fair enough. All right, we'll keep moving on because, like I said, we've got a lot of football to cover today. Yeah. Arsenal hosted Crystal Palace in a game where neither side could break down the other, and it stayed 0-0. In Arsenal-related news, though, it seems Arsenal are going to be releasing Mesut Ozil from his golden cage. Unclear what the finances are involved with this deal, but it looks as though Arsenal are going to terminate Ozil's contract. I'm not sure if Fenerbahce are going to contribute anything financially towards that or not, but it's I jumped the gun a little bit there. It looks as though Ozil's going to be going to Fenerbahce in Turkey, which, I mean, it's pretty sad how this has all turned out. And I think whilst Ozil may not necessarily be everyone's cup of tea, I think there's still every football fan can appreciate Ozil on his good days.
Yeah, I mean, if I was him, I would be making a very tongue in cheek, this is my dream move, like speech,
Ooh.
it's always been a dream to leave Arsenal after 3 years, but I mean, it just feels
I
like
wouldn't
it's
be
gone on
surprised.
so long.
I can't believe it's gone on this long. I think it's been 18 months or something that he hasn't played for, which is just ridiculous, right?
And okay, 18
And
months he hasn't played, and then like before that he was like not playing regularly, and like when was the last time he played consistently? It feels like it was 3 years ago.
probably it's about that.
I'm surprised it's Fenerbahce. I would have hoped that he could have angled a move to Spain or Italy, but maybe he wants to go home, and that's why. Because I just feel like he's still got like there is obviously still talent left in him. It's just a shame that I think probably arguably what should have been his best years now, or at least some of his best years have been sat on the bench.
Yeah, agreed. I think he could still. I guess the challenge is for him is that football seems to have sort of gone past Mesut Ozil and
Yeah,
that sort of languid style, and him not really being a player that you could build a team around for the next few years. It's a hard move, I think, to justify. I think to for a coach or even from a financial perspective, because I guess he's probably outside of Germany or Turkey. I think he's not really going to be putting bums on seats. He's not going to sell a lot of jerseys anymore after the
no.
last few years. So.
If they could get the right deal for him, a bit like Fiorentina bring in Frank Ribéry, or you've got Zlatan playing at Milan. If you could get the right deal for him, I feel like he'd be a great player for any team. But like you said, I don't know if they can.
It's a good comparison. It's a good comparison actually about Ribéry. I mean, I don't know what sort of money Ribéry's on, but I guess like Ozil's on, I think £350,000 a week, from memory.
He's not going to get that anywhere.
Well, exactly right, but he's still also not going to go and play for £20,000 a week either, though, which is probably what you get in Spain or Italy if you're not going to like a Juventus or an Inter or a Real Madrid or Barcelona, because it's just not a lot of money floating around at the moment. So I guess if there's one redeeming feature, it's probably that we're likely to see him again in at least the Europa League or Champions League with Fenerbahce, and maybe in the next 6 to 12 months.
Hopefully they play Arsenal. That would just if Ozil could send Arsenal out of the Europa League, that would just be a dream. And you know what? It'll be good because it might finally mean that Arsenal can move on from this and have, they've got him off the wage books and another place in the squad that they'll need to fill. So, maybe it opens the space up for Aouar. I don't know. Don't know.
Time will tell. By moving on to last night's games, though, finally. So first up was a game that, look, I've got to be perfectly honest, I wasn't expecting much out of the Black Country derby between Wolves and West Brom. It was the first game up, and I thought, yeah, all right, I'll watch it. I'll go through the motions, see if I can't be pleasantly surprised. And it was a lot of fun, this game. It had a lot going on, and obviously Sam Allardyce's teams are never really renowned for playing champagne football, but yeah, they didn't necessarily turn on the champagne football, but there was plenty going on in this game. Willy Bolly had a pretty wild 90 minutes as well. Pretty much single-handedly turning it into an exciting game. He scored one. He provided an assist for Fabio Silva to get his first outfield goal, I think, in the Premier League, and also gave away a penalty in a 5-goal thriller, which saw the lead change 3 times. That there in a nutshell probably sums up how much fun this game was. Big game as well also for Sam Allardyce. He got his first win for West Brom after taking over about 10 days ago. So obviously big result for Sam and West Brom, and I guess also for Fulham and Sheffield United too, and sort of the chasing pack. But I guess it also not just those two teams, but also I guess Burnley and Brighton as well. They're obviously very keenly keeping an eye on the teams that are around them too. Mateus Pereira, he ended up getting 2 goals from the penalty spot, and Semi Ajayi, ended up getting a goal from a Big Sam speciality, the old long throw into the box, and then a centre back converts. This was just this is Sam Allardyce to a T.
He was just, you could tell he was just loving that.
Just the shithousery, right? Like, mate, do you think? I think there is one scenario in which West Brom stay up, and I think the only but that goes along with it is that it will mean that West Brom won't score a goal from open play again for the remainder of this season.
That's not a bad shout, Tommy. I'm glad this is going to be on tape, because if it comes true, then that'd be incredible.
See how long it is before they score again from open play.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Wolves? So I feel like they can feel hard done by on this one. I thought the penalty was a bit ridiculous, and they just kind of like.
Which one? Both? Or the second one in particular?
The second one in particular.
Yeah,
like, he got the ball. Like, I don't understand.
It's real frustrating, not necessarily just because it was a penalty, but because everyone seems to say, "Oh no, there was contact, so yeah, it's a penalty." And it's like, well, like he barely touched him, and like
he got the ball.
See, I guess it's they feel the contact, and then it's literally just bodies go limp and they just fall to the ground, which makes it like it's not particularly enjoyable to watch, even because you don't go, oh yeah, he was definitely fouled. There you go. All right, he was barely touched, and then it goes to VAR, and VAR doesn't check whether it was a foul; they check whether there was contact. And it's like,
which is I think it's the wrong thing. Yeah, there may well be contact, but the question was it was it contrary to the rules? Wolves, I think, I feel for their fans, because again, a bit like Sheffield, like this is not a bad team, and yet they're in a really bad run of form. They're obviously crying out for Jimenez to come back, and defensively at the back, I don't know what's happened. This was a fairly well organised team, but at the moment, they kind of just
it seemed like both teams just couldn't defend set pieces. Curiously, Wolves have gone to a back four in the last few weeks, which, excuse me, I think this was the first time I'd watched Wolves in entirety for a few weeks, and it was the first time I'd realised it. And it was a real surprise, because I mean, Nuno has pretty much built this team, I think, even since they were in the Championship, around playing three at the back and playing sort of 2 or 3 through the middle, but it's strange, and I guess I think they're missing Castro on the left, Johnny Castro. They haven't really, like, I think they were playing Roman Saiz on the left yesterday, and you just sense that they're a little bit just out of whack at the moment, and it's not just the fact that Jimenez is missing. And I guess what we are seeing, I think, from Wolves, I guess, is that because they don't have that presence up front, it just makes it so much more difficult to stay in games and to control games, because there's no one to hold up the ball, which means that the ball comes back to your defence so much quicker. And that's physically tiring, but it's also mentally tiring as well. And it gives you a sense that it's a matter of time until we're going to concede. So I do suspect that that's playing a bit of a role, not just in them having them offensively, they're struggling to score goals, but defensively as well. There's one thing I do want to mention before we move on, and it's about Fabio Silva. I mean, that he does not play like an 18-year-old, and he's still really coming to terms as what it means to be a professional footballer. But geez, like you can see that there's a footballer there, right? Like how he took that goal, that the second Wolves goal was, I thought that really was a player who didn't look like he was 18.
That was, and I was quite happy for him, because I felt you can see the frustration with Wolves fans. Like, okay, this kid's good, but like he's not the answer right now. We need someone else, because it's just a lot of pressure for him. But as you say, like you can see this kid's a good player. Like,
curiously, Wolves recalled Patrick Cutrone.
Cutrone,
from Fiorentina, and he came on and had a really good chance, and I think he hit the crossbar or he put it wide.
He just kind of he volleyed it down into the ground, but it was he got his angle wrong, and it was sort of too close to him and went way too high.
Yeah.
He's another guy. He had an outstanding season like 3 years ago, and you can tell there is a player there somewhere. I feel like he should have come on 10 minutes earlier because he made a difference when he was on. So I don't know what maybe Nuno's seen something in training, but I feel like he needs to get more time.
Yeah, and I guess that's been the problem with Catrone, though, hasn't it? That like he needs more minutes. I think that his whole time at Wolves, like he hasn't really had that much game time. Even he's been getting on a lot, but if you're only playing 10 minutes, it's pretty bloody hard to get.
That's what he gets, and you kind of have to ask him, like, okay, so is he good enough to play or not? Because if he's good enough, then he should be getting more than 10 minutes every week. Otherwise, like you have to get someone else in. But again,
Indeed.
I feel for Wolves fans.
Moving on though, Leeds hosted Brighton as well last night. Leeds struggled to create any clear-cut chances against a Brighton side who hadn't won in 10 games. Brighton did take the lead though on the 17th minute after some really tidy, incisive passing. Andy, I don't know about you, but every time I've watched this Brighton goal that I think Neil Maupay scored, all I think of is yeah, okay, it's good passing, yep, nice. And then I can't look past Luke Ayling just ball watching on the penalty spot as Neil Maupay like taps the ball in acres of space behind him. And I mean, like you and I, like we've played our fair share of indoor and outdoor, but how gutting is that feeling when you turn over your shoulder and you see your man who you're meant to be marking and he's scoring and you go, oh, shit, that's me.
Put the hand up, like, sorry, boys.
And I can just imagine how Luke Ayling felt, especially given that ended up being the decisive goal. So, tough day at the office, I guess, for Luke Ayling and for Leeds as well. If we can lean on Damo's favourite subject, XG, for a moment to illustrate, I guess, the gulf in chances created by both teams. Leeds had an aggregate XG for the game of 0.21. So that's, a quarter of a goal almost. Whilst Brighton at least had 1.18. So obviously that's a big chance that Maupay tap in, but both teams really sort of struggled, I think, in this game.
Yeah.
Not a great match that I don't think many of the purists will remember, apart from maybe that the three passes leading up to that goal.
Yeah.
Game played at the same time, which isn't a common feature of the Premier League at the moment, was West Ham playing Burnley. This one also finished 1-0 to West Ham. This again wasn't a real classic match. West Ham went up quite early through Michail Antonio. Probably the highlight of the match would have been Michail Antonio's celebration afterwards. Andy, did you catch this one?
I saw him speaking about it afterwards, but I mean, talk us through it quickly.
For those who didn't catch it at home, Michail Antonio scored, then jogged off to the corner flag, and then lay down on the ground and pretended to do backstroke. Now, I'm not aware of where this came from, but in the last couple of hours prior to the pod, I did stumble across someone who posted on Twitter a clip of Declan Rice saying that if Antonio scores, he has to go to the corner post and lie down on the ground and basically pretend to do backstroke swimming. So that's where I'm guessing it comes from. It's basically just Decky Rice just taking the piss out of him. But I mean,
it's some
Antonio,
sort of training ground joke, but yeah.
I mean, Antonio, he just seems to be a real funny guy, just good value, and so I guess it's good to have people like that around the club, any club that can sort of lighten the mood a little bit.
Tommie, just on West Ham, quick shout out to a boy Ogbonna.
He's killing it at the moment.
And it's really nice to see as like a guy I've watched in Serie A for years and who had like so much potential. It was actually quite sad to see him go. To go to the Premier League, and that took him a while, I think, to sort of find his feet. But he's obviously a talented player and graduated from the Harvard of great defenders. It's really nice to see him playing as well, and I think he's like a big part of West Ham's good form at the moment. Comes from the back.
Not just, I guess, at the moment, but this whole season, I think it would be a decent shout to say Ogbonna's probably been our player of the season thus far. He's definitely been the most consistent by a long way. But alongside him, I guess one of the other surprises has been Craig Dawson's form of late as well. He's a player that, when he was signed at the beginning of the season on loan from Watford, I think everyone at the club thought that, he's fifth choice. We just needed an experienced hand around the club, and now it seems as though he's jumped above Issa Diop, and Balbuena got, I think, injured, or he had to go into isolation because of COVID, because he was a close contact. And now Craig Dawson, he's played 4 matches, hasn't conceded any goals in those 4 matches, and he scored in one of them as well. So he's had a great start to his West Ham career. And I did see, even in the last 48 hours, that someone has suggested that he's only on loan. Hey, make the deal permanent now, so that we can hold on to Craig Dawson into the future, which I think has really surprised a lot of people, because there was only negative vibes around him as a signing when he first arrived in the off season. So, look, one other thing that I guess many listeners will have noticed is that Seb Allaire, he moved on from West Ham. West Ham's record signing, moved on to Ajax for pretty much half of the fee that was either paid or the total fee that wasn't yet fully paid out. But he's gone to Ajax. He's already got a goal and assist.
You're joking. I didn't see that. That's amazing.
And I mean, you could really see that Allaire's heart wasn't in it in those sort of final 6 months at the club. He was obviously signed by Pellegrini, and he just wasn't the kind of player that Moyes wanted up front. He wanted someone who could run the channels, and Allaire, he can be quick, but we just haven't seen any turn of pace or really any significant sort of work rate since Moyes has ended up taking over. So pretty disappointing. But
what are you going to do with your Allaire jersey, Tommie?
I don't know. I'll probably put it with the Arnautovic jersey as well.
in the pantheon of emotional departures.
Yeah. I feel like I shouldn't buy any more West Ham jerseys with names on the back, because so far I've got Tom Beatties, who's obviously passed away.
Yep.
I've got Noble, and he isn't playing anymore pretty much, but obviously he's the club captain still though. Yep. And yeah, I got pretty much, it was the week that the Arnautovic jersey arrived that Arnautovic said, no, I want to go to China. And that ended up lasting 6 months before that was finally resolved. And then obviously Allaire, I think it was last season's jersey, and but we can see how well that's worked out. So
look, Noble was a solid investment, but other than that,
yeah. A couple of names that are being touted, and Andy, I know, as an avid Serie A and other leagues throughout Europe, you might know some of these names. Allaire is possibly being replaced by, I think it's Daxon at RB Salzburg, and Zola at Spezia, or Dia, who's at Rennes in France. All of those are in good form at the moment. I think Dia, the one at Rennes, I think he's on a bit of a purple patch, which he hasn't really had a season like this before, but which is always a little bit concerning, that you get someone based on form of 10 matches and they go back to of their form from maybe the last few years. But
like a Nicolas Pepe scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Apart from Antonio, it leaves 18-year-old Udubeko on the bench for West Ham at the moment. So I guess we'll see how that's going to play out. He didn't get on against Burnley, which was a little bit disappointing, but I guess at the same time, West Ham were only up 1-0 against Burnley with, like 10 minutes to go. So, and then we're playing particularly well. I wouldn't have been surprised if Burnley had equalised in the final 10 or 15 minutes there, but last they just couldn't find the quality to get them get themselves back into the game. Yeah. Moving on though, Fulham hosted Chelsea, and I've got to say, Andy, I'm a little bit disappointed that George isn't on the pod to dissect this one, because this was a bit of a classic Chelsea performance, I thought, to be honest, in that they were shit.
Yeah, good. I
Um,
was going to say, I'm like, which version of Chelsea was it? Classic.
uh,
Yeah,
it was the 2020 version of Chelsea, the Frank Lampard version of Chelsea. Yeah, I thought they were really disappointing in the first half. Obviously, Werner and Havertz both started on the bench, and Giroud started up top, which I thought, okay, all right, well, maybe there's my biggest problem with Chelsea has been that there doesn't really seem to be a plan for how they're going to play or how they're going to set up for sort of the remainder of the
yeah,
season. You've got a bunch of players who are talented in their own right, but it's very reminiscent of Man United and their midfield. It's just a whole bunch of jigsaw pieces that don't fit together. And
yeah,
poor Frank and Ole have both been put in a difficult situation where they've been told make it work. And I guess Ole, I think, in the fullness of time, has shown that he's actually doing a pretty good job at Manchester United, given the squad that he's got. But I guess Frank's really got to pull something out of the bag here and try and figure out a way to put all of these talented footballers together and make a coherent system out of them. If there's one thing I think about their squad at the moment, it's maybe try Havertz up top as a false nine, because I think Drew's obviously not the answer long term. And look, I'm not. I know some people are big Tommie fans. I'm not sure what George thinks about Tammy Abraham, but I don't think he's the number one striker for Chelsea moving forward. And he's not someone that I would have displace Werner. And it's not someone who I would think hasn't shown that he can dovetail really well with Havertz either. So I think, how can you try and get the best out of Werner and Havertz? Maybe play them together up front.
I mean, look, Frank's gonna have to, throw a few more things at the wall and hope that something sticks. Because I mean, from what I've seen, at least, like for me, the best option from the up top is Giroud, is Giroud, and it's odd that I mean, it's always going to be difficult to bring in this many signings and sort of wait for them to gel. And I think Frank's problems are compounded by maybe not having the clearest idea of the system that he wants to play, but also that some of these guys have just either been injured or bang out of form. Werner at the moment doesn't look like. I mean, I don't understand where this guy was supposed to be the sharpshooter that loves goals, and but it doesn't seem that way. He can't.
He was very fortunate in that at Leipzig, he pretty much had the team set up to play to his strengths. And I guess we're seeing is that some players, if you don't play to their strengths, they're going to struggle, because it was used to a very specific way of playing, and sort of people were moving to create space for him. And now that's just not really happening. So... and it's the same with Havertz as well. I don't think Havertz and Mount can play together. I think they're too similar. So again,
well, Mount has to be one of the few shining lights for Chelsea fans, obviously, because he's the guy. I mean, academy product. They spent no money on him, but he's the guy that's coming up the goods at the moment. I know, obviously, he scored the winner, which was great, but he also had a great shot off the bar, I think, in the first half. And he's like been one of the more consistent guys for them. I mean, as far as other sort of positives go, as you say, like, it was a fairly average performance. Remember, this was against 10 men for a large portion of the game, and a Fulham team in a bit of form, but form's relative for Fulham. They've been fairly poor otherwise, and they sort of made a good fist of it in the first half. The only other, I guess, positive for Chelsea, I think that's sort of approaching their best back four. The guys they played, maybe only apart from bringing in Reece James, I think, back into the lineup, but Rudiger and Silva should be their ideal centre back pairing.
Interesting. I mean, I didn't think Rudiger was particularly convincing. I think Zuma is a better fit for them. He seems to be better on the ball and a bit more assured, and seems to have a better relationship with Thiago Silva as well. But I mean, I wasn't watching this game with Rudiger particularly in mind, though, so I'll take that point nonetheless.
I'm also thinking that, like, on paper, that should be the superior pairing. Like, I'm a big Rudiger fan, but as is often the case with centre halves, like, it's the partnership is more than the sum of its parts, and if you can get the right balance, then he should be a world-class Premier League centre half. But
so for you, as Azpilicueta and Rudiger, they start over Mount and Zuma.
No, sorry.
Sorry,
I bring
Reece
James
and
in.
Zuma,
No,
sorry.
I bring James in for Azpilicueta, and
Mhm,
then I would
mhm.
have Rudiger and Silva in the middle, and obviously Chile
Okay.
B.
Yeah, well,
That's
that goes
my
without saying, right?
goes without saying.
Do they have another left back? They still got who's the Italian Brazilian that plays at left back, Emerson,
Oh,
and
Emerson, yeah,
have they still got Marcos Alonso, or has he moved on? I think he's still there, isn't he?
I think he's still. I think that handsome man is still floating around the club. I did see that Chelsea did this week finally release their like number one loan army captain. I think his name's Lucas Piazon. He's been there for like 10 years. He's had like 50 different loan spells, and he's finally been released to Ajax.
We talked. I called Ozil's situation. I called it a golden cage, but I mean, I don't think it was probably even particularly golden for this guy, because I mean, he'd been there for so long. He can't have been on amazing money. Maybe it was still better than if he had have gone elsewhere. But
yeah, probably than he was playing anywhere else. But the great thing for him is, I think he's been there for that long. He's still only like 26, but he's been there for like 10 years and been on loan.
Do you think, because I did notice that they've been talking about Phil Jones, and because he's been at Manchester United for 10 years, that he's eligible for a testimonial. Do you think this bloke should get a testimonial, a Chelsea testimonial?
Absolutely, he should.
They can play 15 minutes against all the teams that he's played on loan against. All right, mate. There was one other match that was played last night. That was Leicester versus Southampton. I mentioned earlier that Leicester are now up to second place. They jumped above Liverpool with this result, the 2-0 win against Southampton. Goals from Maddison and Barnes as well gave Leicester the win. Did you catch Maddison's goal celebration?
No, what did he do? I saw the goal. I don't remember the celebration.
So there's been a bit.
Sorry, he did. I know. Yeah, he did. I did say it. Sorry, I remember now.
So he shooed the other players away, and basically was like, "No, we're not meant to do this. We're not meant to be celebrating." Yeah. It was a bit of a throwback. Do you remember the first matches in the Bundesliga after the restart, like back in April or whenever it was? And yeah, like everyone, like there was a goal scored, and everyone just kind of looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders and ran back to halfway.
Classic German efficiency, but yeah. But yeah, that was very funny. This whole thing about players not celebrating is absolutely ridiculous. Like the stupidest things I mean, said that they're the most tested people in the country, and they've been running around sweating and tackling each other for the last 2 minutes. Like, I don't understand. But
yeah,
anyway.
I totally agree. I mean, I appreciate the thought behind it, that we want to be minimising people-to-people contact, but I mean, if they can't celebrate together, then they shouldn't be playing, right?
Correct. But yeah, and I know it's the visuals of people at home seeing can't hug their friends and seeing footballers do it, whatever. But still, that was a good celebration. Not Mikel Antonio levels, but good celebration.
All right.
But yeah.
That pretty much wraps up the footballs that's already been played. Knowing that we've already almost been speaking for 50 minutes, we won't whip through all of the games that are still to come. I just counted them. There's 13 to come, I think. 12 or 13.
No way.
So, but there are two games that I do want to touch upon in a little bit more detail. We'll do the lesser of the two first, maybe, and that's Leicester versus Chelsea. It's obviously a big game because obviously Chelsea are struggling at the moment, not just for results, but also for form too. Meanwhile, Leicester are up to second, and I guess there's a pretty good chance. Hang on. So no. So they can drop down to third if Liverpool win tonight against Manchester United. So even still, like third is very good at this point in the season for Leicester. So they're putting in a really strong case, I think, to probably be favourites for this match against Chelsea, which I don't think anyone probably would have expected, maybe even just as much as a month ago.
Agree. This is a match with Chelsea, who although they've just recorded a win, and this game is on Tuesday, I believe. Is that right? Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think it's
sure,
on
but
Tuesday.
anyway.
But I think it's who've just recorded a win, um, without playing well and without sort of showing any sort of improvement from their form in recent weeks. Like, in fact, like a win they were sort of lucky to get in a lot of ways, against a Leicester team who were very commanding against a good Saints team, and a Leicester team that are playing well, and in the same way that we said, not really sure what the sort of plan is for Chelsea when they attack. With Leicester, you've got a very clear idea of exactly what they're going to do, and they sort of seem to have their movements nailed down, and there's a clear idea for all the players as to what they're supposed to be doing. So it's two managers coming at this game from very, very different positions.
What's your prediction, mate? Who's going to win and why?
Oh, I think it's a Leicester win. Again, just based purely on the two games that we watched yesterday, and the way Leicester moved the ball around against, again, a good Southampton team. And remember, Leicester did really pull City apart a few months ago. Like, they've done it already against the bigger clubs as well.
That result where Leicester really did destroy City, and also the Aston Villa Liverpool game, they don't feel like this season. They feel like they're from like a weird dream where everyone was like, "Oh no, that's just a preseason friendly. That doesn't count."
Yeah. I know it does feel like I've got a strange recollection of matches this year. I can't remember what was played when, or things that I feel like was 6 months ago was actually only a month ago. But there's been so many games in the meantime. But yeah,
and because they're constant as well, like there's always matches midweek and stuff, which makes it really hard to distinguish rounds from the other. But
Tommy, sometimes
anyway.
the first time I hear about a match is like listening to it on the pod, and I'm like, how I watch football every week. How did I not know that game was played?
It's easy to miss the football.
But yeah, I think it's a Leicester win to sum up.
Fair enough. And the final match that we're going to cover, even though there are another 11 that we could talk about, but I mean, we'd be going, I think, for 2 hours if we were going to talk about all of them, which is the big one. This is first versus second, or first versus third, but really it's first versus second. Liverpool versus Manchester United. Liverpool, I guess, have shown in patches that they're still a really strong side again this year. Manchester United have shown in patches within matches that they're a really strong side and could be contenders for the title this year. But what's your take, mate? Who are you excited about, and who do you think is going to take out this one?
I'm excited for this one because I really have no idea how this could go. On one hand, I struggle to fathom how this United team can compete with this Liverpool side that's been so dominant and so consistent over the last couple of years. Obviously, even if United get a win here and play well, there is a massive asterisk on the win based on the team that Liverpool have to put out, because while again they haven't sort of played to their best, and I don't think the front three have been as deadly as they have been for the last couple of seasons. But noting all of the absences that Liverpool have had to contend with at various points and for various reasons, whether it be injury or COVID throughout the season, and the fact that Liverpool are basically playing two of their midfielders and centre half, it looks like there's a massive asterisk on this if United win. So it's kind of a free hit for them. I think United would be happy with a draw. But at the same time, I just can't. I could very much see Liverpool going out, and they've had more time to prepare. I just think they're a better side. I could see them coming out and blowing United away in the first 20 minutes, and then.
Well, it's interesting you say that in terms of Liverpool from an attacking perspective, because I mean, the narrative at the moment is really that the Liverpool front three in particular are kind of struggling for goals. I mean, if you look at their form over the past month, they've managed two occasions in the league in their past. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. where they've managed to score more than one goal in a match. That was obviously the 7-0 mauling of Palace and the 2-1 victory over Spurs. So if you take out those two matches, they've had 5 matches where they've either been held scoreless or have only scored one goal. So it's a strange season, I guess, for Liverpool. Like, obviously, we mentioned just before they scored 7 against Palace. They've conceded 7 in a game as well, and I guess the polish has come off a little bit, and you're not really sure whether or not they're going to score 7 or if they're going to go 3 games without scoring either. So, it's just so hard to predict, and I guess I think it's not necessarily going to be whether or not Manchester United can keep Liverpool out, but it's not going to be about whether Manchester United can score. I think they will score. It's whether or not Liverpool can keep up with them. It might be a shootout from that perspective, and Liverpool might get left behind, not because they're an inferior team, but just because maybe their front three just aren't firing.
Well, I think part of the reason that they're having these issues up top is obviously because of the absences at the back, and that obviously affects the way that they play. And you talked
about that about Wolves,
in the same way that you take Fabinho, who's probably the most effective guy in the middle, and you've got to play him at centre half, and he's got another guy with him who's not even a natural centre half either, which means the midfield's reduced to Wijnaldum, who I think is still class and has to play, and I guess you have to play Ox. And
there's like a couple of young players that have been. I think Curtis Jones has been playing as well, and I think he's a really good prospect. I know a lot of Liverpool fans are really excited about him, but he's still a very young, very inexperienced player, and I guess that sort of shines through after a while, especially in comparison to who they've been playing for the last few years.
And I would say also, when you take out not just Van Dijk, but even just a regular centre half, there's even more pressure on your fullbacks to be organised and defend properly. And Robertson's been fine, but I don't think that's the best part of Trent's game, despite all the talent that he has. I think he's strong when there's more defensive responsibility placed on him. I think he's had a bit of trouble with that this season and been caught out of position a few times. But on the other hand, if you look at this United team, I'm not convinced by them. I still, I mean, Eric Bailly's been great coming back in. Like, him and Maguire seem like they could actually form a good partnership at the back, but
which is weird because I thought Bailly was finished there. I thought he might have even left this window, but there he is. He's playing and he's keeping clean sheets. So
and they look much better with him than Lindelof next to Maguire, because that is just a shit show. But then, I'm not convinced by Luke Shaw at fullback for United. Like, I don't rate this United team at all, really.
But Alex Tellers can't really get a look in, though. I don't understand.
We can't. I know. There's lots of things about this season that don't make any sense. But as you rightly point out, they've been good in patches in matches. They haven't seen Man United play 90 minutes. 2 weeks ago, they played City in the Cup and looked like a second-rate team. And I thought, okay, that's what's going to happen when they play Liverpool. So I don't know. I mean, obviously.
So is that your tip then? Liverpool to win?
My tip is a 2-2 draw.
Ooh.
A 2-2 draw. I think Liverpool early, and then a Bruno Fernandes penalty in the 88th minute to level it up. Very precise.
Mate, what minute? Did you say the 80th minute? Because
88th.
Because I feel like even having the minute out there, that's not that a ridiculous a shout to even throw out the minute, because I think it's got all the hallmarks of that being what ends up happening. Geez.
If it does, you'll be hearing about it for a long time.
Mate, we can put it in if it's not too late for our updated preseason bold predictions about you can put that one in there for Bruno Fernandes to score an 88th-minute penalty against Liverpool, and I'll put in there about Big Sam's West Brom never scoring an outfield goal, an open play goal for the remainder of the season.
What's your pick for this one, Tommie? Do you see Man United going top? I don't think it matters if they do anyway. I still think they'll be reeled in, but can you see them going top?
It's normally I get a really good sense of like who I think is going to win, but I'm really struggling with this one because yeah, I really don't know which way to go. I mean, I guess my head says Liverpool because I think like there's too much quality there and too much experience. But you'd never know what Ole's going to do in a big match as well. Like they've shown that in some big matches they can pull something out of the bag, and for this game they might be really pumped up, and this might be like that game against PSG where they just sort of pulled one out of the bag out of nowhere, or he's Ole's had a couple of decent results against City in Manchester derbies as well in the league, and so I don't know. Like I actually think Manchester United have got a damn good chance in this, just because like sometimes in one-off games they can just pull a performance out of their backsides, and I don't think they're going to be good for 90 minutes. I think they'll be good for like 30 minutes and score 3 goals, but be trash for the preceding 60 minutes. So I think this game, I don't think it will be won and lost in the first half. I think the second half and that final 20 minutes, I think that's going to be where the game is won and lost. I'm sorry to give you a prediction though. I think Man United might win this one. I've talked myself into it.
Okay.
2-1. I'm saying 2-1. All right. We'll wrap things up there, though. That's it for Premier League. We've talked for over an hour, which it was never planned to be this long. But, I think in the end, I think I'm just going to end up uploading this as a standalone pod because it'd definitely go for close to 2 hours, if not. But look, thanks for joining us, Andy. Always a pleasure, mate. And thanks for joining us, listeners.
Likewise. Bye, everyone.